Hi, Eric. My name is Asger. Thank you so much for being on the show. I have a ton of questions I want to ask you, and I think my followers will be very interested, and hopefully also your followers. What I will be asking you is questions about your personal development and how you came to become such a phenomenal speaker. So, in order to get things going a little bit, before we get to know you a little bit, I want to ask you for a saying or approach to life that you live by and why you do that.
One of my sort of core beliefs about life is that there's all these, different external measurements of success, and it really seems to me that the only real true measure of success is the number of days that you're enjoying yourself, that you're happy, that you're actually liking it. It doesn't matter how much money you have or what car you're driving or how big your house is. What matters really is how much are you enjoying your day-to-day existence. And so I think that that's probably one of my big kind of rules to live by.
Awesome. Very good. I think that resonates very well with the Scandinavian way of life, peace and work and balance. The next thing is shortly talk about your journey in life so far and why you ended up doing like what you're doing now, so the people that don't know you can get to know you a little bit, and then we'll dig into some other questions.
Sure. My background is my family's originally from South Africa, and I grew up largely in Canada, and I got into sales, marketing, and business life, relatively young, I suppose, and started my first business in England. I guess in about 1997 or so. We were dealing with mobile computers, wireless networking, data capture, that sort of stuff, and I grew that business, from a startup in my living room to a nice little business, and I was lucky enough to be able to sell that company 9 years after I started it. But what happened to me while I was running the business is I reached a point at around about the 5th or 6th year of the business where I attained this state that I kind of thought of as business freedom, where your business is really taking care of itself. In other words, I didn't need to be there on a day-by-day basis. And so with my company needing less of my time and focus, I started following my passions more and undertaking other projects. And, I started undertaking a huge amount of research into a field called nutritional anthropology, which is what led to my creation of WildFit, the company. And then also I got involved in doing a lot of business mentorship. The Prince's Trust in the United Kingdom had still has a program where young entrepreneurs can apply for some funding, and then they get assigned to a local business leader or business mentor that can kind of, help them and guide them through the process of starting their business. And so I started doing that for a little bit of fun while I was running my company. And so after I sold the business, it just seemed like a natural extension that I should, kind of do more of that, but do it on a much larger scale. And so that's kind of what led to where I am now.
Okay, cool. Awesome. The next thing is I found in my life, and I see it with other people when I'm doing coaching and training as well, that the level of personal development is hugely important. And it quite often correlates very well with the level of success that people want to obtain in health, finance, love, and all sorts of area. Do you agree? And if so, what have been your biggest challenges on a personal level to come where you are today?
I think one of the things that's interesting, we use this phrase personal development, and and you can ask some people, are you interested in personal development? And they're like, oh, no, because they have this understanding or this idea that personal development is about motivational speaking or, seminars and workshops and that sort of stuff. The thing is that personal development is everything. I mean, it starts with when you're learning how to communicate with your parents, and then learning how to crawl and then walk. All of that is personal development. You are constantly evolving and growing as a person. And so one of the core things I believe is that we have to continue that push forever. We never stop developing as a person. And your sort of developmental velocity is directly related to how much effort and investment you're willing to make in growing yourself. Whether that's a formalized education or experience or traveling the world or whatever the case may be. So, when it comes to kind of the biggest challenges to personal development, the joke of it is that the biggest challenge to personal development in the world would be where everything goes well. The toughest challenge in personal development would be no problems. Everything's easy. And I'll tell you, there's one way kind of to see that, and that is that if you know, I don't know if this is an actual expression or if I made it up one day. I just have this idea, like, you know, easy high school, difficult life. Because if you go through high school without facing any real challenges, if it was socially easy for you, if sports was easy for you, I mean, how many times have we heard stories about the captain of the football team, you know, ending up with a huge beer belly and living in a trailer park somewhere? Now, I'm kind of exaggerating here a little bit, but I think that the only real challenge, there are only two challenges to personal development. One, and the unlikely, is that you face no challenges. Then how do you develop as a person? And then the other challenge is a refusal to face those challenges. It's somebody having a challenge like that come up and running away from it or turning your back on it. So I think as long as you avoid your life being perfect or trying to make your life perfect, then otherwise it's going to be okay.
All right, cool. Well, that kind of brings me on to my next question. Is we often hear that, you know, the saying, "There's no failure, only learning," and I think that's very true. But what I also found is that it's kind of hard on an emotional level to get that. I mean, it's easy intellectually, and I remember for a time when I felt like a failure when my longtime girlfriend left me, and I'm sure you probably experienced some failures. Because everybody that takes chances, like you, in order to reach that level, has to take chances. And how do you deal with like the big failures, so to speak, although they're learning points, to move on and take that as a learning thing?
I'm not sure that it's as much an emotional challenge as it is a temporal challenge.
As a what?
As a temporal challenge, a time challenge.
Okay.
What I mean by this is that, sure, an event happens, it takes place, it's shocking, it's negative, it's difficult, it's adverse, it's different than you wanted it to be in the moment. Okay, I get that. But isn't it true that the vast majority of the time, when the future rolls around, we're able to look back on that event and go, you know what, actually, I'm really glad that it happened. You know, and so, I mean, that happens all the time. People, you know, get fired from a job and they're really angry and hurt and disappointed. Only years later, you find out that it was only because they got fired from that job that they started their next business and it became a phenomenal success. Or, you know, somebody's really hurt and disappointed that their long-term partner had all this expectation of relationship. But the reality is if that person was going to leave today, they were going to leave one day. And so actually it's a great blessing that they finally got off their butt and left now so that you could create space in your life for the right person. And you know, so one of the tricks that I use, a little mental hack here that I use, is that when something is happening that might feel like a failure or might feel adverse or might feel difficult comparative to the way I wanted my life to be, I immediately in the moment, I go out and look 5 years out in the future and look back on it. I remember it from the future and I just think, okay, how might this serve me in the future? And look, I'm not going to pretend that that makes everything okay in the moment, but it certainly makes me a whole lot more resourceful in the moment.
That makes a lot of sense, you know, taking that future gap and looking into the future 5 years. Very good tip. I'm going to apply that for my next challenges. One of the things I also admire so much about you is you really had a lot of success in a lot of different areas. And what is your secret to excelling in so many areas? I mean, you have a ton of different businesses and you're also a really great public speaker. How did you do that?
Well, you know, I want to say that it's not, I wouldn't hold it up as a standard. What I mean is that I think that any number of those, first thing is if you have a perception of a certain level of success that I've had in a variety of different areas, let's bear in mind that whatever success I have managed to achieve in those various areas has only come about because I've been willing to not achieve in those areas. I've been willing to test and experiment and, quote, fail.
Okay.
If it appears like I have a much broader experience of success than some of the other people you know, I want to tell you that it's probably, if that's true, it's probably largely because I have a much broader experience of failure than a lot of the people you know.
Okay.
You know, I hate to use the old cliche, and I don't usually use baseball metaphors when I'm talking to Europeans, but you know, there's this whole idea that whoever's going to hit the most home runs, the guys who have always held the top home run records have also held the top strikeout records. In other words, they had the most successes, but they also had the most failures. So I think that's one thing really serious to consider. But then the other one is that people often ask me about that, like, you know, how is it that I I built my business in the mobile computing business, and then I got involved in Hollywood special effects, and then we did medical simulation for the U.S. Army. And, some of these things had big ups and downs in them and all this kind of stuff. And the one thing that I would say is that I am probably sometimes a victim of my own creativity and my own, love of variety. And that I often wonder, if I had really sunk my teeth in one given area a lot more focused, wouldn't I have done a whole lot more with it? Be clear, I'm not talking about regret. I'm just talking about as I contemplate projects that I move forward with in the future. And I realize, some of the projects I'm working on right now, I believe are important, like globally important. So if they're really that important, then it really drives me to want to focus in more tightly on those things. I think very often, particularly creative people, are so easily distracted by shiny objects that it makes it really difficult for them to achieve the kind of genuine recognition and success that they really want. And here's the key, and your question just prompted it for me. The key is to find that one really strong success and make it happen so that you have the clout and the money and the recognition and the credibility in the marketplace to help you to pursue everything else that you want to do. If we look at somebody like Elon Musk, I mean, there's a guy who just is a game changer wherever he goes. He is clearly making a dent in the universe, right? He's making stuff happen. It would have been a lot harder if he just decided to start Tesla from scratch if he hadn't first created PayPal. Now, even if I don't know the economics of it, I'm not suggesting that it was that money that helped him with Tesla. Maybe he had no money. I have no idea. But what I have a sense of is that having had one huge phenomenal success, then that makes it a lot easier to get people to follow you for the next attempt. It gets a lot, make it a lot easier for people to want to invest with you, to work with you, and so on. So I think that one of the real keys, and I think I did do this well, is in my first business, I stayed very focused. I worked on that business until I had business freedom. And as a result of that, it gave me the time and the money and the flexibility and the credibility to be able to pursue my other passions.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you're saying you were very focused on one passion, and then when you kind of had success with that, it gave you options to really do a lot of different things. Because I mean, many of us has many passions, so I think that's a good advice. Really stick with one thing and get that success, and then move on maybe to some other things.
Sure.
You kind of touched a little bit upon the next question I have, and this is a question that always comes up, which is when you see somebody have success, it's a question: is it hard work, or talent, or maybe some other external factors? And I primarily believe that everyone has a huge potential to do it, but I see so many people are struggling with it, and also I'm trying to find my own success and prove that it's right. So what do you think your success is based on? Primarily hard work or other external factors, or how much is really, your talent?
It's very hard to know something like that. But what I would suggest is that any perceived talent that I have is hard won. I wasn't born with it. It's like it's because I was willing to take on this adventure or that adventure that certain skills, talents, and experiences were developed. So in a very real sense, I think that they feed upon each other. Because I was willing to take this risk, I learned these things, which allowed me to take this risk, which meant that I learned these things, which allowed me to take this risk, and so on. And so I think that it's really a feedback loop, that the talent comes from the willingness to undertake things, and then the willingness to undertake things, results in risk, which results in, mistakes, which results in experience, which of course results in better judgment, more skills, and so on. So I think it's both of those things combined in a weird kind of exponential upward spiral, where the more you take on, the greater experience you get, and the greater experience you get, the more you're willing to take on.
Yeah, so you're pretty much saying that anyone can do it if you're just willing to take the chances.
I know that people come up to me, especially when it comes to things like speaking. They see that I've been, traveling around the world or touring with Tony Robbins, who's in London this weekend doing his big UPW event, and that I've shared the stage with President Bill Clinton and this kind of stuff, and they go, "Wow, you were like an overnight success." Well, no, I mean, 15 years earlier, I was terrified of public speaking. And no way on earth I was going to be doing that kind of stuff.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's very impressive how you turned that around. So yeah, you're actually leading the interview very well, because that is kind of the next question or phase I want to go into and talk a little bit about how you became such a good public speaker. So a lot of my followers are, say, new to public speaking. So could you share like 3 pieces of advice you would give to anyone that is starting out, somebody that has a message that they're really passionate about and they want to share it to the world? How would you suggest to get started with that?
Well, this might be a little self-serving, but I would suggest if they're in Norway or if they're in Oslo, Stockholm, or Copenhagen, then at the end of this month, I'm doing a series of one-day workshops all about public speaking. I mean, I suggest come. But,
Of course.
Whether people can make that or not, or if they're in other cities and people can watch them anywhere, I want you to think about something, and that is that nobody was born afraid of public speaking. It's not a natural fear. Maybe it could be argued that it's a natural instinctive fear of falling or spiders or even snakes or what have you. Maybe we could argue that. But there is no natural fear of public speaking. And and what happens is that it's somewhere along our lives, generally in our early education, some event takes place, and we learn that public speaking is a scary undertaking, and it doesn't have to be at all. So one of the key things is really just to get some practice. I'm a big fan of Toastmasters International. I did some of my very, very early speaking at Toastmasters, and I really enjoyed it, and it gave me a safe environment to practice in and sort of overcome some of my feelings. I think that was a big deal. I think the other thing is that, hey, here's something like that everybody has that I didn't have, that Tony Robbins didn't have when he started off, that Jim Rohn certainly didn't have when he started off. It's called YouTube. I mean, none of us have that. And what I mean by YouTube is not, you getting yourself out there. I mean, you can go Google right now and go on YouTube right now, and you can find some of the best talks ever. Whether they're fictional scripted talks from movies or whether they're genuine talks and TED Talks and, all this kind of stuff. So you can go, you can see Martin Luther King, you can go see John F. Kennedy. You can go and study these people. And, for me, when I started off speaking, the only way to go study these people was to go to the library and go look through archives to find this video. Now it's right there on your phone while you're waiting for the bus. So, I think that's my second piece of advice would be get on YouTube and watch people speak and be critical of it. Look at what about it. Look what could have been better about it. Look at the techniques. Look at the way people use their body language. Pay attention to their voice. And on top of that, there's a whole genre of videos online that are all about the best speeches. In fact, I have, you can probably find it somewhere on my Facebook page, but we have a 3-part video training program that we offer for free. People can just go do it. And what I often do is the people who sign up for that course, because I know they're, trying to, develop their skills as a speaker, I'll send them links every now and again to talks that I have found on YouTube that I think are really fascinating. So I just pop them out a note and say, hey, you might want to check this one out if it, matches their And one that I saw was really interesting. It was like an evaluation of the 7, greatest speeches of all time. And what was really funny about it was the presentation is not so good, but the is. And so these are all great opportunities for us to learn. And then the third thing I would say is this: get a mentor.
Mentor.
Find somebody who is achieving the results that you would like to achieve, and do whatever it takes to spend time with that person. Everything from, hey, can I buy you lunch to, can you be my mentor? Or if they, even better, if they offer educational programs, you can go and study from them. There are some really great trainers out there in the world. Anybody interested in becoming a speaker, from a high energy perspective, or, doing transformational, motivational work and that kind of stuff, they got to go see people like Tony Robbins and Brian Tracy and Jack Canfield and so on. If on the other side, you're looking at speaking in a different area. Let's say you want to talk about relationships. Well, then you want to go out and take a look at how those people are doing that field. You want to go and see how John Gray talks about Mars and Venus, and you want to go and check out the way Alison Armstrong is talking about knights and kings and the stages of men. Because not only will the content be inspirational for you, but it will show you how the world-class people are delivering their content on the stage. So I think that there's some real opportunities today for people to develop skills much more quickly than was available when I started.
Yeah, these are really good tips. Just to sum up, join Toastmasters. really go watch YouTube videos, get yourself a mentor. And I can say I'm a follower of you, and you really have some good videos. I've used some of your tips, including the speech map. That was really good. That really helped me structure my speech. So there are some good tips. If you're not on Eric's newsletter already, I suggest doing that. So I think a lot of people don't have a mentor. Maybe they go to Toastmasters, YouTube, but that could maybe be that link that a lot of people are missing. I see that.
Well, you see, the thing about a great mentor is that a great mentor is going to be, watching YouTube videos and going to Toastmasters is going to get you practice, and it's going to teach you skills. But a great mentor is not only going to help you with your stagecraft, with your presence, with your delivery, but they're also going to help you with commercial things. Like, how do you negotiate properly when you want to go and do a talk somewhere? How do you get your stuff? How do you build training programs? Like, some people want to become a speaker just so they can talk about their business. Great. Go find a credible business speaker and learn from them about how they do. This is one of the comments that we often make to our clients is there's plenty of places to go and learn about speaking, right? But if they're wanting to learn about business speaking, most of the places they would go to learn about speaking are not so useful because most of them are teaching personal development, motivational speaking, right?
Sure.
So, what you want to do is make sure that the person that you're learning from has used public speaking in their business life. And for me, for example, I spoke at the Shanghai Film Festival, at the Variety 3D Summit, Hollywood, the Vancouver Olympics. I mean, I've done some really high-profile non-motivational speaking, which means that my clients are going to get that perspective from me. Whereas if somebody wants to become, like, say, a big transformation speaker, well, then now what they're going to want to do is find somebody who's really excellent in that field and say, hey, you know what can I learn from this person? What mistakes can I avoid? And, and that sort of thing.
So I think these tips are really excellent if you're starting out. How about if you're a little bit further in your business, maybe you have a small group of followers and maybe you're starting, I wouldn't say outgrow Toastmasters, you can always go there, but at a certain point you might be one of the better ones there and not learn so much. And how do you kind of expand if you want to make a full-time living?
The very first thing is, never allow yourself to be in a position where you feel like you're not learning so much, because what's really funny is a friend of mine had a big mailing list of people and invited them to come to a public speaking training I was doing, and they invited them using so that people could reply directly to me. And I was really amazed how many people wrote to me and said, oh, well, I'm already a professional speaker, so I don't really feel the need to come out to your course.
Okay.
Wow, that's really interesting. And I thought that was interesting is that I've probably spent 10,000 hours on stage. I've shared with incredible people. I've spoken in front of thousands. And that would not stop me going and learning more about speaking. It wouldn't stop me from studying more. And so when somebody writes to me and says, oh, well, I'm already a professional and there's nothing more for me to learn, I can already tell you that they've pretty much peaked. There's not much further they can go if they're not really willing to continue to learn. And frankly, I've been really surprised when we started our speaking training programs. It was all designed to help really entrepreneurs who might have been a little nervous or a little lack of confidence become great speakers. And since the brand took off and since the program's reputation has spread, we now get everybody from people who are phobic. We've had people fly in from other countries because when they get the phone in their hand, it makes them cry and they want to get over it, to professional grade speakers coming in and refining their skills to another level. So I think one of the really key things for somebody who's already getting started, already established, keep studying, keep learning, keep practicing, and hang out with other speakers. So I'm really blessed, for example, one of my mastermind teams is a group started by Jack Canfield, and there's about 100 of us that are members, and most of us are speakers and authors in the transformation world. We get together twice a year. I'm sure you saw the movie The Secret. The people in The Secret are part of this mastermind. So it's, so that means that twice a year I'm going to hang out with people. I'm going to learn about best practices. I'm going to be inspired to do more. I'm going to find out, hey, what TV shows got them the most attention. All those things that are really useful, that if you try and do this on your own, it's going to take a whole lot longer.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful piece of advice. Basically, just surround yourself with people that are successful. And it's the famous quote, you obviously know that from Jim Rohn, you're the average of the 5 people you spend time with. So how do you, Malcolm Gladwell, he wrote a book, Outliers.
Yeah.
where he writes that it takes about 10,000 hours to reach mastery in most areas. How do you suggest training and getting then those 10,000 hours? Obviously, you need not just to be in front of the mirror, but I mean, it might be hard in the beginning to get stage time and other things.
I think that what we have to remember is that what I think is really important to remember is that the best speakers in the world are storytellers ultimately.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the best trainers, the best keynote speakers, the best salespeople. Ultimately, what they're good at doing is telling stories. And so when you think about getting your 10,000 hours in, one of the ways to get those 10,000 hours in is to be telling those stories anyway. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you're out for dinner and you want to share a story. I mean, remember that a story that happened to you that you might normally want to share with your friends because it's going to make them think or teach them something or make them laugh is probably a story that you can use on stage in some capacity. So the more often that you have a chance to tell that story over and over and over again, that's still practice. That's still part of your, you know, thousands of hours of practice of telling that story. You know, a story is almost like a tongue twister in the sense that, look, you know, in England they have this tongue twister where, you know, the word truck is lorry for some reason in England. I've never understood this. But,
okay.
You know, one of the tongue twisters is to try to say red lorry, yellow lorry, and say it together. So red lorry, yellow lorry, red lorry, yellow lorry, red lorry, yellow lorry, red lorry, yellow lorry, red lorry, yellow lorry. I can do it. Because I practice it as part of a game with some friends and what have you. But the vast majority of people can't do that. Well, you want to be at a place where your stories are like that, and that requires a few things. One is easy recall, and the other one is that the muscle memory in your mouth is used to telling that story. So the words, you can always tell when somebody's telling a story the first time ever because they do things like, oh yeah, so it was a Thursday. No, it was a Friday, and I was there with my friend Jim and Sal. No, I don't think Sally was there. You know, because sometimes when you're telling a story for the first time, the memories you're having to dig them up.
Sure.
Whereas if you practice that story a number of times, then that means when you tell the story again in the future, the facts are more readily available to you, and it's easier to tell it. So, you know, one of the ways you get that 10,000 hours in is you don't want to wait till you're on stage. Another way is that you go to things like Toastmasters and you go to speaking clubs and, you know, Rotary clubs where they're always looking for somebody to come and do a speech. And then, of course, you have the other great advantage here, and that is, again, YouTube. But now you have YouTube from a totally different perspective. And that is that you can now do a talk whenever you want, live, directly to the world, and get instant feedback about what's going on. And if you don't like what you ended up doing, you just take it off YouTube. But now you have this capacity for doing that. Now, here's the thing. I would tell you that if I were practicing all over, starting fresh, and nobody knew who I was, I would be doing hangout versions like this, where I was just doing a talk to, even if nobody was watching. There's something interesting about doing an interview like this when there is, when the camera's live. Because you see, you're talking in front of a mirror, whenever you make a mistake, you'll stop and start again. You know,
yeah, I know it.
Live and you mess something up, you're just going to go, oh, well, I messed that up, and you're going to move on, which is a lot more like what a live call is like.
That makes a lot of sense. I know it from my own life. I'm at home and practicing to make YouTube videos, and I'll do the recording several times. Whereas when you're on stage, you got to keep going. And it just gives you that little bit extra edge of training, and you're a little bit more peak performance. You concentrate a little bit more. So that's a wonderful tip. And I also love the thing about storytelling, that you don't need to be on stage to tell a story. We can practice all the time. That's really good tips. Yeah, that's very good tips. In Denmark, you probably know we have this famous philosopher, Søren Kierkegaard. Maybe you've heard of him. He had a saying that his life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. So if you could go back 20 years, what advice would you give yourself?
So people often ask me that, and what's really interesting to me is, first of all, I don't really do the regret thing. So as I look back at my life over the last 20 or 46 years, as the case may be, I don't really look back at it and go, oh, I wish I'd done this differently, or I wish I'd done that differently. This, you know, I mean, I'm enjoying my life. I like it, and maybe at the time I would have liked something to be different than it was. But you know, I'm kind of the sum of all those parts. So if I remove one bad event that happened 5 years ago, then where does that lead? You know, what experience did I not get? What did that stop me from taking on later in my life? So, you know, in the sense of going back into my own past and giving myself advice, I'd be inclined to just say, hey, you know, the main thing would be to say, just have faith. It's going to be okay. You know, the most scary things you're going to face, you should know now that they're going to be okay. And I would have maybe told myself that to reduce the amount of stress or worry I had about some of the things that I stressed or worried about over time. But if I look at it again from another perspective, if I was, for example, giving advice to my son, or you know, it's really odd because there are things that have happened to me in my life that I would never wish upon him ever, even if I'm grateful that they happen to me.
Okay.
Kind of an odd dichotomy or an odd contradiction. But you know, I think some of the advice that I would give there is recognizing that when we're sitting at a decision point and we're looking at A and B, should I go down future A or future B? You know, we waste a huge amount of time making decisions like that. Like, you know, when the vast majority of times you can just simply make a decision, and the reality is you will never ever know if you made the right decision. Ever. You'll never know. I mean, you know, one day you think, oh, should I quit my job and start a business? Well, you know, choice A, quit job, start business. Choice B, stay in my job. In order to make the decision, you have to make up two fantasy realities. You have to make up a fantasy about what quitting your job and starting a business will be like. Then you have to make up a fantasy about what staying in your job might be like. And those are total fiction. You have no idea how accurate they are. For all you know, you should have stayed in that job because you're about to meet the love of your life, and then you quit and you started a job. You don't know. For all you know, you should have quit that job because the next day, you know, the company was going to be taken over and everybody's going to get laid off anyway. You don't know any of these things when you're making your decisions. And so my feeling is that you accept life with a very healthy measure of faith that whatever is going to happen to you, whatever is happening to you in the present, is serving you, even if it doesn't feel so good in the moment. You mentioned Jim Rohn earlier. Well, you know, what does Jim Rohn say? He says, you know, imagine you pick up a book. In chapter 1, everything's going to be okay. In chapter 2, everything's going to be okay. Chapter 3, everything's going to be okay. You're not going to finish the book, right? Well,
of course not.
I feel like life is like that. And so when things start getting bumpy and difficult and stressful, then that's when you smile and you go, I'm here for this. I'm here to have emotion. I'm here to have experience.
Awesome. Good take on life. Just have faith. You talked a lot about YouTube for training, and often in podcasts and seminars, people ask, what are your 3 favorite books? But I want to ask you, what are your 3 favorite speeches? And maybe what should the audience after this interview go watch? What would you suggest?
Wow, that's a tough one. You know, I have different types of speeches that I've enjoyed for a whole bunch of different reasons. You know, we often at our speaking academy, we actually show people a series of talks that, you know, to give them the opportunity to break them down. So I can tell you that one of my absolute favorites was Ken Robinson on TED Talks. It's, I believe, the number one video, the number one watched video on all of TED Talks, and I think it's a fabulous talk. You know, I'm any speech that you have an opportunity to see Martin Luther King is phenomenal. He had a real way with an audience and a real way with a message. JFK, same thing. I mean, it's just an honor and a privilege to see him. You know, so there are a lot of different ones. I think also there are some great speeches that have been done in fiction. And so I recommend them to be watched sometimes, but also with the careful attention to detail here, that sometimes you can watch a talk that was done in a movie, and that talk is so unbelievably compelling that it might make you feel, oh my God, I could never do that. Remember that they had script writers. You know, there's that fabulous Jack Nicholson, You Can't Handle the Truth. You know, a phenomenal monologue and a great speech. But we have to remember, it was Jack Nicholson delivering it, and it was written by professional writers. So we can watch it to understand great delivery. But what we shouldn't do is go, wow, I can't live up to that expectation. I have a policy, for example, I never read anything written by Ernest Hemingway before I'm doing any writing, because after I read him, I just can't write anymore. You know? So I think it's important to watch those speeches with a discerning eye of saying, hey, look, a lot of those people, even the real ones, they got there through a huge amount of experience, or the fictional ones, I mean, they're professional actors, there's writing behind it. It's important to have that perspective in mind so as not to feel kind of pushed down by the greatness of it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I hear you're going to be a dad, Eric.
I am. Well, I am a dad already, but I'm going to now have a daughter.
Yeah, once again. So big congratulations on that. And I look so much forward to you coming to Denmark. I know you're coming the 30th of April, doing a one-day seminar. You're going to come back in June. do a 5-day seminar, more intimate with a smaller group. Is that
Yeah.
right? So my concern is really, when you're going to be a dad, is that going to have an impact on your frequency of visits to Denmark in the next couple of years?
No, it already has. You know, when my wife and I decided that it was time to kind of, you know, take the next step here and have a baby, even before we got pregnant, I restructured my entire events schedule. So these events that I'm doing now in April and June are my last scheduled events for the year.
All right.
And I'm doing a few appearances in the balance of the year, but no 5-day trainings, no.
Okay.
And in 2017, I will be doing only one of my business programs and only one, maybe two of my speaking programs in Europe, because obviously I'm going to be cutting my travel down a great deal.
Sure. Well, is there any way we can still keep learning from you? Do you have any podcasts or webinars or other things, online products?
I like to share stuff on social media, so you know, if people go to, I think, facebook.com/Eric Edmeades, my Facebook page, I'm often sharing stuff there. You know, and we quite often upload free training programs for people, because obviously can't be in every country all the time, so it's nice to get out there. So I know, for example, on my Facebook page, you might have to go down the timeline a little ways, but there's definitely a 3-part video training on public speaking. There's also a 3-part training on business, entrepreneurship, and how to run a company. So, you know, I think the best thing to do is to keep in touch from a social media perspective, and you know, I'll be back touring again, maybe, you know, toward the end of 2017.
Okay, sounds good. This is awesome stuff, Eric. I don't know, the sound is going back.
Oh, I can hear you fine. It's good on my side.
You can hear me fine.
Yeah.
Very good, Eric. I want to say thank you a lot for this interview, and I think everyone that has the chance to see Eric, either the 30th of April, a 1-day seminar, should really come. All the people I know that have seen you, Eric, have been so happy, and they say, go see Eric. So that is really thumbs up, not just me saying it, but other people. And obviously, if they have the chance for the bigger 5-day event, I know they can learn a lot. I know Patrick, maybe you remember him.
Yeah.
He went to the seminar and said that was before Eric and after Eric. So that is a big chance to learn a lot of things. So really, I just want to say thank you to you, Eric. I'm going to put some notes down from this interview, links to videos and your tips, so people can have that in a written form as well. I think that concludes it.
Cheers. Thanks very much.
Awesome, Eric.
I'll see you when I'm in Denmark.
All right, cool. Bye-bye.